So, first thing to do is, before the question, is put your hand up. That's more than that. Right, well, so we'll take them in ones to begin with, and as we go on, people figure out things to do faster. We'll start over there. And there's a microphone, which is on its way.
Thanks. I really appreciated that, and I also appreciated your input to a recent film, The Power Trip, about the fracking industry, and which is made by Undercurrents and is free to download, where you said that one of the most effective things to sort of combat the power of the lobbyists is effective grassroots campaigning, because they really don't like that and they don't know what to do with it, they can't manipulate it. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that, shockingly, the government recently made a statement relaxing planning permission for fracking, so that it's going to be the same as putting up a garden shed or a small conservatory. You don't have to get planning permission. No. And completely bypassing local authorities and local democracy. And I think this is appalling on so many levels, really. And whereas here in Cambridge we're not threatened with fracking because of our geology, unlike huge swathes of the countryside in England, the attack on democracy really affects all of us. So Friends of the Earth, and they're having a consultation over the summer about this, and Friends of the Earth and 350.org are working together to influence this consultation. And I'd really encourage people to get involved in that. And I wondered if you had to sign up on the Friends of the Earth website. I'd like us locally in Cambridge to lend our support to what amazing communities in the North of England have been fighting this for 7 years. But I wondered if you had any particular tips, Tamasin, about how to be most effective in this struggle.
Yeah, it's a good area, the fracking law. It's a fascinating lobby. I'm going to credit my colleague, my co-author, Antony. He does all the. We always say he does the dirty stuff. He does fags and oil and fracking, and I tend to do things like NHS privatisation, education privatisation, that kind of stuff. So all the fracking work was done by him. He was just using words. You're right by pointing out the grassroots thing. I mean, I'd like to get more involved in activism, but actually I'm not an activist, I'm a researcher. But what I do is go around and I listen to lobbyists. It's very easy to sit in the back of these rooms and just hear what they say. And I do remember it was the time when Occupy was happening outside St Paul's, and there was a gathering of the tax haven crowd, and literally the tax haven crowd, and Caymans are there, and all the big law firms and the accounting firms. And they were like, this isn't funny anymore. And it was because people were gathering, people very visibly gathering and talking and discussing, and very visibly. They weren't isolated, they weren't online, they were gathering. And so this is why I think meetings are very powerful. But I think you're right, I don't think we should be in any way complacent about the state of our democracy. I think it is pretty broken. I think it's probably worse than we think it is. I mean, look at what's happened in the last week with the executive power grab in Parliament. So to be honest, I don't really have answers to that, but I do think, support grassroots campaigns. They are the people who are the lobbyists here. So use that as your spear.
Right.
Thank you.
So, actually none in the middle. Well, there's one. Yes, we're one in the middle. But I'm trying to stop extremism of questions. There's one. Yeah.
Can you pass the mic down?
Thanks. It's just really a follow-up on from what you were saying about grassroots and the power of grassroots. Are we seeing an attack specifically on that to drive a wedge between them, to undermine them, to delegitimise them, in the current fashion for calling things astroturf? People are being accused of being astroturfers, and I wondered if that was part of the attack on the grassroots.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it depends on the context. I mean, astroturf, for anybody who doesn't know, is a fake grassroots incredibly prevalent in the States. So you get these groups that are entirely corporately backed, created, whatever, but they look like grassroots or astroturf. I think, I don't know. I mean, it depends. On the context, there are some astroturf groups out there. It's not as prevalent as it is in the States, but certainly we've seen some. It's very difficult to actually trace often with these groups whether to prove one way or the other. What I tend not to do is get involved in activist on activist fights. I always try and remind myself that there's a massive corporation over there that's better to kick them than activists. So I can't really answer that question unless I know the kind of specifics of it.
I wondered whether that was a strategy.
Quite possibly.
To encourage precisely that.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to what the, undermining the credibility of groups, that would make sense. So, yeah.
Right, so there.
So is there any...
Okay. Is there any legitimate lobbying apart from your own, of course? How do you identify it?
This is a really good question. Of course, there was a lot of legitimate lobbying and a lot of legitimate corporate lobbying. They have. The thing is, and this is what I always say when I'm in a room full of aggressive lobbyists chatting about things. You have business has a legitimate voice. The problem that happens in the context of a corporate £2 billion commercial lobbying industry is that they drown out everybody else. They have entirely taken over in some key policy areas. Health is captured, MOD is long captured, defence is long captured, education is increasingly captured by the corporate interest, particularly tech interests. So when they crown out other people, I mean, one of the things is a return to kind of proper evidence-based, not government evidence-based policy making, but proper evidence-based policy making. And this is why, if you open up corporate lobbying to public scrutiny, you can start having a look at the reports that land on the minister's desk that say definitely you should take this policy course because it's going to do this much for jobs, or it's going to save for tax, whatever it is. And then we can quibble, we can question it, we can look at the figures, and we can actually say, well, that's not really, that's kind of paid for PR, that is. And so, I think it helps to but of course, there is entirely. Lobbying in itself is not a bad thing. It is an absolutely, utterly essential thing. But in the context of the commercial lobbying industry, it's a very anti-democratic.
So should it all be open then?
Yeah.
So right at the back, then back to you.
I've been involved in campaigns against academisation of schools in Cambridge, and I've had a lot of experience of talking to parents, counsellors and teachers who feel that they've never really been properly involved in the consultations. And it makes me suspicious that maybe the academisation process itself is the result of corporate lobbying, because of the way in which they've been handed over to businesses, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've actually done some work on this, and there's a chapter in the book which is about the privatisation of education, which I think Ernst & Young called the whatever, the $100 million global opportunity. But again, it's very difficult to actually trace back to a particular corporate influence. Certainly there is a corporate movement towards privatisation of education. It's much clearer to see in the States with the charter schools, but they're just academies by another name. You can see it in developing countries now, so there are chains of schools that are going in there that are, a lot of them are backed by people like Zuckerberg, from tech interests, and they're going in there. And what they're doing, academisation, what it does is it privatises the management of schools. So if you can privatise the management of schools, then you can deal with everything else. You can get rid of the building, and you can put it all online. You can do stuff with the T's and C's of the teachers. But if you have captured the management of the institution, which is what they've done, then you kind of have control of how the rest of the system operates. So yeah, it's definitely a kind of a marketisation move, and you can see corporations behind it, but it's actually such a big kind of thing. Read the chapter.
Yeah. Good. You want to say a bit more about that? Because there's the idea of the tech companies just trying to convince people their schools are terrible.
Oh, what, the playing down,
Yeah,
kind of doing down the schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all rubbish, and using the PISA schools as kind of this kind of leverage against various systems. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that they're doing it. I mean, I think one of the things I think is interesting now is technology as a means of privatising and marketising public systems. And we're seeing it in health, and we're seeing it in education. And the thing is, if you listen to some of the kind of arch reformers in the States, they will talk about technology as a way of usurping public control, particularly of the teachers' unions. It's a way of kind of undermining and destroying the power of the teachers' unions, and they talk about the seepage of technology into schools so nobody notices, right? But it's introducing a system that it's a private company providing that tech, so you have privatised bits of the school through it, and they're introducing a system that can then be sort of marketising further. So I find this very interesting about tech. It's happening very slowly, but I'm concerned about kind of where it's going, both in the NHS and in education, because you hear ministers talk about personalised healthcare and personalised teaching and personalised learning, and 24/7 care, and it's all tech marketing bollocks, about how it's entirely evidence-light. Evidence-free, evidence-like, whatever. There's nothing to support that it's transforming education or transforming health, which is what their claim is. So I'm quite concerned about kind of the technology as a means of privatising. It's a different lobby, though. It doesn't work like that.
Come back to you in a bit. So George, you're going to have to.
Thanks. Yeah. So you mentioned at the beginning this idea of opening the curtains.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how do we do that systematically? What sort of policies or bodies or structures would we need?
It's really simple. This is where I put my lobbyist hat on. You have a register of lobbyists. You have a statutory, mandatory register of lobbyists, which they have in the States, they have in Canada, they have one in Brussels, it's good, they have one in Israel. They're all over the world. And we campaigned for it, we were helped greatly by the fact that there were numerous scandals involving lobbyists, and then eventually there was one scandal too many. Patrick Davidson was caught taking money for questions, whatever it was, and the government caved in. They said, yes, we're going to introduce your statutory register of lobbyists. And then they gave us, remember the gagging bill? Yeah, got me to pay for that, because what they did is they took a policy that was supposed to open up corporate lobbying, and they did a really rubbish version of the statutory register. So we actually have a statutory register at the moment, which is utterly bogus, does nothing. But they shoehorned it in with the gagging bill, so they decided to attack charities at the same time, and they also attacked trade unions. It was a three-part bill. So it was a pretty brilliant politics, because it meant that my entire coalition of NGOs was starting talking about, oh, gag, lobbying bill gags charities. You can't do anything with that. I can't campaign at all around that, because the NGOs were attacked. So it's a very simple statutory register of lobbyists. And what that would require is that if you are paid to lobby, as defined, you have to say who you are on a public register, who you're lobbying for, whom you're lobbying in government, and what you're lobbying about. And we'd like them to say how much they're lobbying, how much they're spending on their lobbying. Is it £5,000 or is it £1 million? Because that makes a difference. And then you can start to get a picture of who's influencing our government. And the example I always use is, if we had that information when Andrew Lansley was putting through his health and social care bill, we had lobbying information about what the private health insurers were doing, what the private hospital companies were doing, what the tech companies were doing around health, or have been doing for the 7 years that Andrew Lansley was in Shadow Health Sector. We would have had a much better, but we had an entirely different public debate. The BBC wouldn't have got away with putting, whatever it was, health and social care bill puts power into the hands of GPs, because we would have been able to see the corporate activity around this, and we would have been able to have a much more informed public debate. So it's good, it's a healthy thing. But yeah, they don't want it. There was no political will to do it. I was laughed at by a lord who said, it's never going to happen. And it didn't.
This is where I tell my only anecdote.
Yeah.
In 2005-06, I was on the bill committee of the Companies Bill, which is the bill that controls, lays down the whole of company law. And every so many years you get a reform which collects together all the reforms of the past few years and puts them together in one big bill. So I was on the bill committee of that, and I proposed an amendment committee stage, and the amendment was that all companies should get a resolution of their shareholders before they can spend any money at all on lobbying, and they should then have to declare how much they spend. And I thought this is a really sensible thing to do for all the reasons we've heard. And it's just an important bit of transparency, but also there's similar provision already for donations to political parties. Companies have to get a resolution of that sort, have to declare that's what they're doing before they can make a donation. So surely it makes sense that if they were spending money on influencing government policy, they should do the same thing as they're doing for donations. So I was very optimistic. I put forward this amendment, so there was a debate, and the minister said, but lobbying is a very important thing. It's all about contact between government and government. We can't reduce it. And various other people said other things. Other people just looked down and did their correspondence. And when it came to a vote, all those in favour, me, and all those against, everybody else. and so I'm quite sympathetic with the idea. It's quite difficult to do.
It is quite difficult to do. It's quite difficult to do. We did put a private member's bill through the House of Lords, which is Saturday now, when it's going to become so and they will support it now, Corbyn. So I'm optimistic, but yeah, there's very little political will in the current government to introduce transparency.
Were all those other people on the committee basically, in your view, in the pocket of lobbyists?
No, they weren't. But it's an important point that Tamasin makes in the book and elsewhere, that you have to think about the career paths and structures for former politicians. So when I gave up politics, I got an email that said, if we all had tenure at the University of Cambridge, there'd be nobody left here. Well, what's the career path for other people? What can they see as their future lives? Especially in an atmosphere where politicians are very unpopular. And so, having a politician as your business partner doesn't sound like a great thing, does it? Whereas, what do they know about? They know about going to lunches at Davidson.
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
Yeah. And it's not brown envelopes anymore.
No.
I mean, it's not corrupt like that. It's a gift economy.
That's
It's
right.
kind of, everybody understands how it works.
That's right. Yeah. It's kind of long-term exchange. Anyway,
Yeah.
enough of me. Yeah.
It's a direct follow-up to what we've just been talking about. You showed that the revolving doors are a significant element in this, and sadly, Labour politicians, as much as Tories, seem to like to be seen as a cab for hire.
It's a direct quote, isn't it?
It is.
It certainly is.
I have in the back of my mind an attempt to restrict the swiftness with which this could take place, and that there had to be a pause before someone could actually go straight into corporate activity, lobbying activity. Is there scope for something more radical along those lines to, if not ban it altogether, make it, use that as a means of campaigning publicly, which I'm sure will be very popular, that retiring ministers just can't do it for so long that they've got to look for something else.
Yeah. I agree. And it is something we have campaigned on. The revolving door, you can slow it down. I don't think you can ban it. I think it would be very difficult. What happened to the charity? My ex-minister who had expertise or a passion in that particular area. And you have to avoid this thing kind of charities, good lobbying, corporates, bad lobbying, because, you know, then all the corporates will just start charities. It doesn't work. So you can't have good, bad, you just have to have open. And the revolving door, you can slow it down, but they do it in other countries where you have a much longer cooling off period, but you also have enforced rules. We have a system at the moment, there is a committee, an advisory committee called ACUBA, the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments. It's an advisor to the Prime Minister. People who want to take a job, they're supposed to, not all of them do, go through this committee, which basically just waves them through and gets permission, but it's, or certainly advice on whether they can take a job or not. And they put conditions on it. They say, yes, you can take this job, working for, and increasingly this is happening, ministers going into industries that they used to regulate, which is extremely problematic, because the potential there for corruption, if you're a minister in post and you are offered a job, or it's hinted at that you might have a job when you retire or whatever, and you are regulating that company, or you are handing out contracts to that industry. And so increasingly ministers are going into, and senior civil servants are going into industries that they used to be involved with. But yes, what the advisory committee can do is they put a ban on lobbying. Right? They say that, okay, you can take this job, but you're banned for lobbying on lobbying for 2 years. They'll say, right, for 2 years. Okay. Now, their definition of lobbying is basically it's like brown envelopes. You're not allowed to do that. You can do everything else, and nobody's watching it. Nobody enforces any sort of. Nobody monitors it. It has no power. This committee whatsoever. It's entirely useless. And there is a lot of there's a lot of parliamentary noise now about calling for massive reform. There's been a lot of committees looking at committee reports that have looked at it over and seen it as what it is, which is too utterly ridiculous. So I agree.
I mean, you used the example of Francis Moore. I mean, it's only a couple of years since he was in government, and
in charge of all the civil service reform you could think of.
Yeah, but he's got a ban on lobbying.
Has he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not lobbying. It's just having luck.
We've got the marker.
Very much.
Go back to it.
I've got a question and a comment. The question really is about lists of lobbyists, registers of lobbyists. Has it noticeably made a difference in places like America?
Not a brilliant example.
And my comment really is about the right-wing press and NHS reform and our government. And I think the government and the press are all philosophically on the same side in favour of privatisation. So I don't think lobbying was even necessary.
No, I agree. Yeah. A lot of lobbying, I should say, is between corporates. So a lot of it is one corporate positioning themselves and being the expert on this policy area over another corporate. So they're lining themselves, so it's Capita versus Circle. And Capita will lobby so that it gets a contract rather than Circle, or it gets the advisory, whatever it is, rather than Circle. So a lot of it is kind of intra kind of corporate lobbying. It's about corporate positioning. But we don't see any of that.
We call that balance.
And what was your question was?
The question was really countries where where lobbyists are registered, does it make any difference?
I think it does. I think America is a very, very bad example. But their register of lobbyists is very useful. It's very useful. You can look and see who is lobbying Washington. You can see the list of them. It's a very imperfect system actually, and it's a kind of a abused system as well. The Canadian one is quite good. And that is used. It's not. I mean, look, it's a weak solution. I know it is. So it's kind of a starting point. We need to be able to see it, and then we can do something about it. But at the moment, we can't even see it. It's the counting map. It's basically
Yeah, firstly, I'd like to make an observation. Early on, you said if such and such continues, we will see a form of capitalism the likes of which we have never seen before. So I would argue that we have seen it before. It was called feudalism. My question is about concentration of power in the media. I mean, the media is a separate industry, but can we really tackle lobbying without fixing media?
Which is next week's talk.
But they are intricately, sorry, I jumped in, but they are intricately linked actually. I mean, for sort of brevity, I didn't mention it, but certainly on the map, the big swathe that goes from the road end of Oxford Street down to sort of Chancery Lane towards the city, the big PR agencies that have lobbying as one of their kind of things that they do, they are full of former journalists. I mean, it's the three pillars. It's the politics, the media, and lobbying. And I had a brilliant illustration of it in that a couple of years ago I found myself in a Conservative Party conference, as you do, and pulled that old trick. There was the Telegraph party. Everybody was there. I wanted to go and look at my ticket. So I did that whole thing, and I just went, I just had a bag outside, walked in, and it was full. You sort of trip over George Osborne as you go in, and it was full of basically, well, Tory journalists, but it was full of journalists and lobbyists and politicians. And they're getting on like a house on fire. It's all really cosy. So, for example, you know, the former political editor of The Sun, he now works for one of the big agencies. He's a PR lobbyist. So they're all kind of, they all look the same for a start. They're all kind of interlinked. Yeah, so the media's a big part of it.
So two down.
Do you think that organisations like 38 Degrees and 10 and 10 can have any effect?
Yes?
Have you noticed an effect?
I don't know. I think organisations like them are good in that they do a lot of good kind of they educate people about issues, they raise issues, they bring people together. But I don't think they're a replacement for anything else. I think they're an add-on. They're a good add-on, but I think it is about getting together where you are with people that care about issues that you care about, but I mean physically getting together and doing something about it. So I certainly wouldn't dismiss them. I think they're, you know, more power to them. I think they claim a lot of kind of success that probably would have happened anyway. I don't know. I'm not going to criticise them. I think, yeah, they're good.
As you perhaps know, it's Refugee Week, and I was at a meeting on Monday evening about the detention system. And a suggestion made actually by one of the audiences was one of the reasons that governments are quite keen to keep detention centres is because for the most part they are run by companies like G4S, Serco and Mighty. It's enormously expensive, it achieves very little, and it ruins many people's lives. I'd just be interested to know whether you think there's any truth in that.
I'm going to say I don't know, because I've not looked at it, and the thing is, I think it's very, I suspect that, I mean, they are big lobbyists. Captain has donated millions of pounds to the Conservative Party, and I don't know if the others have or not. They fund think tanks, they do all the stuff that lobbyists do, and they're immensely powerful. I'm a researcher, and I tend to only talk about the stuff that I've researched. And I tend not to try and sort of draw. It's not a conspiracy. Sorry, I know you're not saying it's a conspiracy. But this is a very sort of rational thing. These people are doing it for money. You know, this is it's a rational decision to lobby. It's not a kind of not a global power domination, whatever thing, which I know you're not saying. But I just, yeah.
I mean, G4S has had so many collapses and done so badly. They're still used, and one wonders why.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. But you could look at, I mean, whether they have people in the House of Lords. The House of Lords has a lot of lobbyists in it. Whether there are people there who are advocating for them, who are paid by them, who are shareholders in them, or possibly in the House of Commons as well. Look at who their lobbying firms are. And it's quite easy to research the sort of basics of their lobbying structure. So Yeah, I'm sure somebody has looked into it, maybe Corporate Watch, maybe on that.
There's some evidence in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't.
The US prison system is some evidence for that.
Yeah, it's not a sector I've looked at, so.
There's one there at the back.
I worry that transparency alone it still requires the investigative journalism that really only a couple of newspapers are continuing to do, and where the funding model for that is being broken. Are there any countries in the world that have actually used legislation to regulate lobbying in a more effective way?
Didn't really answer that. I probably do. Let me think back to it. It's been a little while since I actually did the lobbying side, and I do have a spreadsheet somewhere of the global regulatory systems for lobbyists. I actually don't know. Yes, there is one. There's somewhere in Asia where lobbying is banned, and it's like Malaysia or somewhere like that. And I've got it wrong, and I'm on camera, and I've got it wrong, but there is. It's banned. And I don't know how they define lobbying.
Malaysia and Singapore.
Yeah, it's one of them. And I don't know how they define lobbying, and it can be different, but it is banned. So yes. I knew I knew the answer to it. Yes.
Can I ask you to say something about how you see a developing relationship between an organisation such as Spinwatch and a new grassroots organisation such as 2027? I picked up 3 messages that you might be pushing so far. The first one is know your enemy. The second is do your research. And the third is about keeping a positive message that is about the interests that have emerged from the research and in your own language, so that it communicates to people. That would all seem to be fine. The question that I'm intrigued about is how much energy does one actually devote from the grassroots as opposed to experienced experts in fighting the enemy as opposed to going around them?
You need to talk some activists. I think this is that nobody likes lobbyists, right? Nobody. I mean, unfairly, they get a lot of flack a lot of the time. It's often not lobbyists at fault, but it's some politician or whatever, but lobbyists get flack. Nobody likes it. There's a really shady reputation, and I always say to them, look, if you weren't, it only stinks because it's secret. If you did it in plain sight, 90% of what they do is really dull, really dull. But because it's secret, it seems much more kind of exciting. The point that I was going to make, I totally forgot what it was. No, I totally forgot what it was. What was your last point? Your question was?
Go round.
How much energy
emerging
grassroots should devote to opposition?
And it comes back to, yes, lobbyists being sort of deeply unpopular. Often I see it like a bit of an Achilles heel. If you can show that lobbying is happening within the context of a campaign, so whether it's previously undisclosed meetings or close contact between a decision maker and a company, and it's done not covertly but in private, that can be enough to elevate a campaign. And it's not necessarily about the lobbying, but it can be very useful to kind of expose the lobbying in order to kind of you've got a bad guy basically. You've got a bad guy. Sorry, American kind of, that's what it is. So it can be quite useful. But I'm not a campaigner.
So there's just right at the back, they're not bringing down the microphone anywhere near.
My question is about Brexit. I don't know how familiar you are with what your expertise in this particular case study, but okay, I'll ask anyway. I suspect that the Remain campaign was backed by a lot of lobbying from lots of powerful corporations and rich people.
The man in the pink tie as well.
For example, okay. So how did they get it so terribly wrong? And the lasting image we have is the Boris bus, which everyone uses as the symbol of the win of the Brexit campaign. Have you got any ideas
It's Labour that did the question, isn't it? How did they get it so wrong? It's a massive question, which I think people like Karen Cadwallader there in the Guardian are trying to answer. And, you know, there's a lot of people devoting a lot of time to kind of actually trying to work out what went on and how they got it wrong. I mean, the Leave campaign themselves have kind of said how they won, and they did talk about. They talked about issues to do with emotions and the heart. And there was a lot of facts coming out of the campaign. And you know, it's a kind of first lesson in PR is you talk about, you have stories and you have, you know, kind of emotions and you poke people that way. But this is awful. I'm not, you know, I refuse to answer a question. You know, it's a big question, and there's all sorts of kind of ways of answering it. Because there are a shady bunch of chances. There you go.
So, time's getting on. So, hands up for one who's still wanting my special. So, I have 3 left. Any more? 4, 5. Okay. Let's take all. So if you're really, really short, I'm looking at Alice.
Really short.
We'll have all 5. So, start with Claire.
So I just had a question about the role of social media in lobbying, and whether it's one of the things that's helped break it, because you know, for your optimism, or whether it's made it worse. Because I noticed you said the important thing was to meet in person, not online. That's my question.
Yeah. Hands up. Well, don't bounce got things.
Tamasin, you've earned your supper, but to earn your pudding, you have to answer the question behind you, Imagine2027. So the idea is that you've got to come here and tell us how we fix this with concrete suggestions. And there have been some hints. One thing I'd like to lob in is, what if it was necessary for every person with an official position to record and hand on to some regulator every discussion they had with the lobbyist in case it was needed later? Just one idea.
So one down here.
I'm just wondering about the political structure of countries and whether that. You talked briefly about us having a flirtation with some very vague system, different system from that we are at the moment. But I mean, here and in America, we basically have first past the post systems. We may pretend otherwise sometimes. On the continent, for instance, most of them are going to be proportional voting systems of one sort or another. So, does lobbying affect the outcome, political outcomes, more where we've just got a first past the post system than it does in one where it's more, where the outcomes are more of a vote and are more uncertain, if you like?
Yeah.
2 more. There's 1. 2. Here comes.
Sorry. When you come down to it, it is about truth to ourselves and about falseness. Do you think that if we all went back to reading Plato and studying Socratic dialogue, that we actually avoided emotion and all that stuff that make friends and influence people that America has brought over through advertising? Do you think that we stand a chance? Because I go to a philosophy group called the School of Economic Science, and it's just basic, simple truths, like follow the truth and leave the untruth. You don't have to fight against it, because if you do, you give more energy to your opponent. And it's a bit like bringing up a child, you know. I've known so many men who are 70 years old going on 2.5, that we really need to take it on board, I think. Indeed, can you comment?
One last one. There, right.
One of the 3 things that gave you hope was the response to Jeremy Corbyn, and a lot of that was from, you know, the young generation. And, we kind of heard about the imbalance really and the baby boomers, that so much power sits with the older generation. And I just wondered, and this may link into Alice's, how we can harness that. I think there's a huge thing that we can perhaps harness, because they really see through that, the power, and they don't want that self-interested kind of thing.
Lots of things you could talk about.
Okay.
You don't have to talk about them.
No, I might use the plaything. Only out of ignorance, actually. To start your question, Jeremy Corbyn and youth being attracted, I think if you flip it on its head, the Conservative Party at the moment is trying to work out how to take its average age, which is what, 70 something or whatever, of its voters, and take it down, because it's really, this gives me enormous optimism. If you look at the polls, and there are surveys done of kind of how young people feel about kind of the way that this country works, and particularly the kind of the system, the capitalist system and stuff. And there's a lot of questioning going on, and I find that immensely optimistic. And I think it relates actually to the voting thing. If that can be translated into kind of politics and a change of government, or just I don't quite have to put this, but the Tory party is under immense pressure at the moment. We've seen so much activity with all these think tanks, and that was only a smattering of them. There were so many initiatives like, shit, what do we do? We only just scraped through last time. And so I'm quite optimistic. I'm 45 as well, so I have no idea what they think. No, but I think people are quite rational. We have this idea that there's this kind of immense blob of people out there who are frothing at the mouth and blah, blah, and I don't think that's true. I have immense faith in people. On the question of kind of whether lobbying is different under different voting systems, I have no idea. There's an academic basis, right? I have no idea, but I know that lobbying is different in different countries, very different. And we do have a very American system here, but it is very different in France and Germany. We work kind of across with kind of people on the continent, and they look at us and kind of head in hands. Social media, has it helped or has it hindered? I don't know. Where is it? I don't know. I tell you what, I on these big questions, I don't really know, but I tend to go back to what the lobbyists are saying. And I do remember sitting in front of a guy, and he looked like he was out of the Foreign Office. He was a very tall, posh guy. He was talking about what a nightmare his world had become, because before they used to deal with a couple of journalists, a couple of papers, and they could get their missing, they could control the information environment pretty well. And that life was pretty simple. And now they have to deal with it. The gatekeepers are gone. The journalists are everywhere, and you've got bloggers. I hate bloggers, and social media. And he was talking like he was in the Cold War. He was talking about having listening posts out there online, and picking up signals and all this other stuff. And it's obviously driving him nuts. So I think, great, carry on. It's helped. I think it's helping. I don't know. It's certainly giving him a lot to do. So keep him going. Keep him busy. And the concrete idea, Alistair, thanks so much. I don't think anything that I propose is ever going to make any change. I think, I'll keep plugging away at transparency and trying to get a register of lobbyists, and I think if we have a change of government, we will have a register of lobbyists, and then it'll be done, and it'll do something. But I think what will happen is that politics will overtake stuff, and that's what I'm inspired about at the moment, is the Tory party trying to hold back a tithe at the moment, trying to think what the fuck we're going to do about this. And I think, politics, it will overtake the small kind of policy questions about whether lobbyists should declare their clients or not.
Right.